Hello and welcome. I'm your host, William Liu. This is the Reaction Podcast presented by Betway for all your sports betting needs. Please hit the QR code to my left here on the screen or find the link to it on the description of this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts eventually or on Spotify, wherever you find the podcast. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. Raptors finally win tonight. They snapped a 7-game losing streak. Who was even counting? Honestly, the Raptors have been losing so much that you just kind of have to sort of let it ride a little bit. But Raptors tonight, second out of a back-to-back for the Indiana Pacers, who were able to hang on and beat Miami yesterday. But they came in here today super banged up. And the Raptors, I thought, actually came in with a pretty strong effort. Obviously, they've been playing really well of late. They just haven't been able to close out and get the result. That Boston game is still burning for me. Last 2-minute report did confirm a number of missed calls, including, obviously, Tatum fouling Jakob Poeltl on the potential basket at the end there of regulation, and then Tatum shuffling his feet. Whatever, like stuff like that is going to burn you regardless. But Raptors have been playing good basketball, and it just figured to be a matter of time where they run into a team that is a little bit banged up themselves. In the Pacers' case, very, very banged up. And the Raptors play well enough to actually get themselves a win. And I know that like there's already going to be a lot of discussion over should they get this win or not, whatever. Look, this team is playing really hard. They're human beings. They're competing. And like it's exciting to see them actually come through and be rewarded for that. In the bulk of the season, when we look back on it, this is not going to be one of those make or break games. But at the same time, it's one of those things where this team has fought hard enough to get a result here. And they win 130 to 119 against the Indiana Pacers. I want to remind everybody that we will be taking questions. So please continue to leave those into the chat if you are watching on YouTube. Producer Jerome Chang is back on duty, and he will be looking for your questions. So just get those in. We'll get to those in the second half of the show, as we usually do. The other thing I wanted to bring up, too, is just if you are watching the stream live, please hit this like on the stream because that'll help the people who watch it in the morning after as well. It'll tell YouTube, basically, hey, the Raptors actually won. People are going to be looking for a recap of the game. And if you hit like, more people will find that. So I appreciate you. If you're watching live, please just hit the like button. Okay, let's talk about the game itself, because I wanted to start at the end because the start of the game was a bit shaky. I'm not gonna lie to you. The Pacers did not come ready to play. The Raptors also were fairly sloppy themselves. But the Raptors did play pretty well in the first half. We'll get to that in a second. What was interesting to me was sort of the second half dynamic, because the Pacers are a pretty good team, and you did expect them to sort of like turn on the I guess like hit the gas a little bit and make some adjustments. And the Pacers did get a little bit crafty, and they're not really a defensive team at all, but you started seeing them playing full court press. You started seeing them play a lot of zone, basically junk defenses. They had no center all night because of Miles Turner. Apparently he's not playing the second half of back-to-backs. And so, even though he had 30 plus last night against Miami, he doesn't play tonight. That leaves the Pacers with Enrique Freeman, who I really just found out about today as their center. He is not a center. He's like a 6'7" strong. He's like a bulky wing, but he's not a center for sure. And they had no center coming off the bench either. So it was like, they were very undersized. And so they had to sort of play this different style of defense. And on top of that, I think that because the Raptors are walking it to the basket, they had 69 points in the first half. That was really nice by the Raptors. They just needed to do something else, and they started, playing a lot more pressure defense, especially on the ball, trying to create these turnovers and deflections. And TJ McConnell was obviously going to be a huge part of that. He had a pretty disruptive game defensively, although offensively, he wasn't able to sort of generate the typical looks that make you tear your hair out when he drives hard on the baseline and turns around for a short 5-foot jumper. Can't believe that he made that his go-to move. And then Quenton Jackson, who's like a two-way guy for Indiana, also did a lot of good stuff defensively, pressuring the ball. And I wanted to see how the Raptors would handle that, because we've seen the Raptors this season play with a lead and just lose it so many times, right? Like, how many times have we talked about the Raptors were playing great all game and then they lost? That's like the recurring theme of the season. Today, the Raptors were playing well enough. They even got up 23 points, which was, I think, the biggest lead of the season for the Raptors after, 13 games here, where they're now 3-12. 23-point lead was their biggest lead of the season. How are they going to handle that? And Indiana did start punching back. They did start getting back into the game. I think they got it down to like 7 or 8 points in the fourth quarter, and there were some nervous, tense moments. The Raptors just kept turning the ball over. That was the issue for them in the third quarter, is they still were able to get to the rim. Anytime they calmed down and, like found ways to sort of like share the ball and then take care of the ball going to the basket, they were scoring. It felt like the Raptors shot like I don't know, man, 80% at the rim. It was like very, very easy for them to finish around the basket. And if they didn't finish, they were getting fouled a ton. They went to the foul line 28 times, but they just kept turning it over. They had 10 turnovers in the third quarter alone. And in the fourth quarter, something interesting happened. So going to the fourth, I think the Raptors only had 2 timeouts left. And typically Darko has tried to keep those 2 timeouts towards like the last 2-3 minutes of the game. Number one, it gives you more of a flexibility if you want to challenge, whatever. If you challenge, obviously you need a timeout to challenge. Number two, you always want to save at least one timeout at the end so that you can sort of execute some sort of like late game scenario, advance the ball, drop a play, whatever. So typically he doesn't like to go into the last couple of minutes with just one timeout. But there was a play in the fourth quarter where Jamal Shead, who had actually looked to have seriously hurt himself on a play at the end of the third quarter where RJ Barrett turned it over, there's a 3-on-1 fast break. Jamal Shead was the last man back. He tried to jump up and verticality against TJ McConnell. TJ was a little clever. He kind of went under him, kind of like flipped Jamal Shead over, and he like had to break his fall from a high distance and had to break it with his hands. And it looked like he was really injured. He put his head into his jersey and like he went straight to the locker room. Luckily, he was able to come back out. But unfortunately, this was a pattern that happened twice in the game where Jamal was getting guarded by TJ McConnell, obviously backup point guard versus backup point guard. And he just threw like a very lackadaisical pass with, I believe, his left hand. And TJ McConnell anticipated it, broke the other way, and set up, I think, Obi Toppin for an alley-oop dunk. And Darko called a snap timeout. And that was the second one that he called in the exact same instance, because there was another one in the first half where it was the exact same thing, right? Where TJ McConnell stole it off of Jamal Shead, making a lackadaisical pass, and Darko immediately called a timeout. That time, he got Jamal out of the game and put in Davion in the first quarter. And in the fourth quarter, it was the same thing. Jamal had to come out and Davion come in. And it's small details like that where it's like accountability has to be something for the Raptors, where for a young team, yes, you're going to be, outgunned most times, especially with the Raptors dealing with injuries. You're going to have a lot of these battles where you're fighting uphill. Today, because of the injuries to Indiana, it was kind of more of a closer, fair fight. But still, like, you are still going to have things where, okay, fine, maybe losing and competing, you can sort of rationalize that away. That's happened a lot this season, and we can do probably 20 more episodes of that, the rest of the season. But the one thing you do need to have is standards. And I do feel like when you're losing games, can you maintain those standards? And one thing that Darko's worked really hard on this season is just getting those damn turnovers down. That was the first problem the Raptors had to start the season, was just how lackadaisical they were with the ball. Then it was like, okay, can we take care of the defense, right? Can we take care of our defensive rebounding? Like, just these little steps. And of course, when you're managing over the course of 82 game season with all the injuries that come up, these different patterns that come up, you're just going to have to like play whack-a-mole on these problems and solve them. But the turnovers have actually been a really, like, it's been under control for a couple of weeks. And then to see the Raptors come out with 23 turnovers today and almost allow Indiana to come back into the game, which obviously, Indiana, they have Pascal, they have Tyrese Halliburton, they have Benedict Mathurin, like guys who can like create offense, like TJ McConnell. Like, you don't want to give them a head of steam, especially you don't want to let them play in transition because they're great at that. And seeing Darko call that time, I thought was just super important because the Raptors responded to that. Ochai Agbaji started hitting a corner three. Then he drove in for a layup. RJ Barrett drove in for a layup. Davion Mitchell drove in for a layup. And all of a sudden, they got back to sort of the strategy they were playing over the bulk of the game. And then when it was late game scenario, because Indiana did have like a pretty good strategy, they were like, okay, let's give it to Benedict Mathurin. He's getting guarded by Grady Dick. And Grady just had nothing against to offer against Mathurin. Mathurin was just driving straight at Grady, and Grady was just like either fouling him or like not being able to sort of keep him in front. Mathurin is just way too aggressive and way too physical for Grady to sort of adapt to today. So that's something for Grady to work on. But that didn't matter, even though Mathurin felt like he scored every time he touched it in the fourth quarter, because RJ Barrett also scored every time he touched it. And yeah, it was a game where the Raptors got it. They let a 23-point lead come down to 8 points. Like 7 points. That's normal. Honestly, we've even seen other teams do that against the Raptors. Raptors were down big against the Lakers, and I think they came back from like 30 down to like 3 points at the very end there. Like, that's just how the games are going to go. But are you going to have the maturity, and are you going to have the execution and the discipline to finish it out? And I thought RJ Barrett and Jakob Poeltl, the two of them combined, obviously Davion and Ochai were able to make a couple more shots too, but it was primarily those two guys. And I think number one, bringing Jakob into the game and sort of playing through him as a hub and just like, okay, fine, maybe the Pacers are pressuring the hell out of the ball and like Jamal Shed as a rookie can't handle it, or that doesn't have the discipline to handle it, or like, RJ was getting stripped a lot too. He had 5 turnovers. He was a big part of this. That wasn't working well. Well, what you can do is get it to your big man and let him sort of like run some of the offense and have your players play off ball. I thought that was a clever adjustment by Darko and a pretty simple one, but at the same time, a pretty important one because that settled the Raptors in the fourth quarter. And then the Raptors started getting back to what they did well, which was going to the basket all the time. And my goodness, is RJ Barrett good at going to the basket? I mean, he finished with 39 points. That is not a career high because he had 46 against the Heat a couple seasons ago. So that's actually his next goal to hit, 46. But he had 39 points tonight, which is just like a phenomenal performance. Yeah, I think he had 10 of those in the fourth quarter alone, especially down the stretch there where, he drove it in for a basket. He drove it in and got fouled twice. He hit a turnaround jumper against Obi Toppin, who he seemed very friendly with. Obviously, they were teammates over with the Knicks the last couple of seasons before they both got dealt. He had another one where he had a crossover pull-up jumper. Like it was just stuff like that where RJ really gave you that composure. And I think that the Raptors have gone to RJ quite a bit in crunch time, right? When you look at sort of like, that, pretty much every game since he's been back, he's been very involved in crunch time, at the end of that Celtics game, at the end of the Nuggets game, at the end of the other Nuggets game, at the end of the Kings game, et cetera, the deal. And like a lot of it hasn't really come off for him, but today I thought RJ really found a really good balance. It helped that the Pacers didn't have the type of rim protection to sort of stop RJ at the basket. But at the same time, I thought RJ also did a good job of like starting to get a little bit too unsettled. He was turning the ball over a lot. 5 assists against 5 turnovers is not a good ratio. But at the same time, when he was able to, really lock in for that fourth quarter, him and Jakob in particular worked really well, just getting him space to get downhill. And yeah, giving him that ability to sort of shoot and score. And then there were even a couple times where it's like, okay, I think he missed Grady wide open for 3 or Ochai open for 3. That doesn't even matter. I think that's when it's like the composure and the confidence to sort of take these shots over and over again in these big moments, when the other team is knocking down the door. That's the composure that I think for a young team that the Raptors were missing. Because, when you think back to like, how did they lose against Sacramento? It's like, okay, DeMar is just going to shoot it every time and you can't stop him. And it's like instilling this feeling of fear where you see the lead slip away and then they start running away with it and they carry that momentum forward. And then it kind of gives the whole team confidence. When you look at what happened against the Nuggets both times, it was like, okay, Jokic is just going to post up over and over again. Jakob's literally going to foul out. And all of a sudden the Raptors can't do anything. And, every mistake is going back the other way for a basket. That's kind of what it felt like with RJ today. And so that was a great performance. I thought the start of the game, he also started it great. He knocked down, I think, 3 threes in the first quarter alone. He finished 4 of 8 from 3. His 3-point shooting has really come down. But I thought today, he was able to sort of play more within the flow of the offense. Other guys were able to penetrate and get into the paint and then kick it out. And RJ was able to catch and shoot for 3, which was nice. He also did knock down a pull-up 3 as well. But just in general, just anytime RJ gets to the paint, good things are going to happen. And the other game, it was more, the Celtics were able to, show extra bodies towards him at the end, and he was able to set guys up and whatever. And the Celtics obviously have 7-footers who can protect the basket and longer wings. Pacers didn't have that. And so RJ was just like, I'll just take it in myself. And yeah, 39 points for RJ is incredible. Like that's, that was a really, really strong performance by RJ Barrett. And I thought that, it was just great seeing the team sort of play off of him. Jakob Poeltl just continues to be like phenomenal. I mean, this 3-game stretch by Jakob where he's had 25 and 18. It was 25 and 20 until the NBA decided to audit and take away 2 of his rebounds. So it was 25 and 18. Then it was 35 or a career high last game on 16 of 19 shooting with like 16 boards. And then this one, 30 points, 15 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 13 of 18 from the field. For Big Yak in the middle. I mean, he was guarding everyone from Pascal to Tyrese on switches. Like he was just doing an amazing job. Played a team high 37 minutes as well. The only thing is he did have some couple of turnovers, and I feel like him and RJ were struggling a little bit sometimes to play against the zone. They just weren't reading and seeing the extra defenders there, and so sometimes they just threw it straight into opposing teams' hands. But still, Jakob, man, he's just been so good. And today was a lot of him crashing the glass. I think the 4 offensive rebounds might have all been putbacks for him. But him also playing pick and roll, and then even the things that don't show up on the box score. And I thought Alvin Williams once again showcased this really well on the broadcast, where twice in the fourth quarter, one by Ochai and one by Davion, Jakob was able to set the screen and then roll and then seal his defender, which in this case is like, so he's setting the screen to get a little bit of a bit of space for the driver with the ball, and then Jakob's rolling and he's pinning his defender under the basket, and that that defender is not able to come over and help and contest at the rim. Now, granted, the Pacers' help defense at the rim was non-existent all night, and that's why they lost. But like Jakob doing a great job of just like keeping that lane open. It's kind of similar to what Marcin Gortat used to do for like John Wall back in the day. But just a very savvy move. And so like if he can trap the help defender and it makes it more of a one-on-one, especially because Ocha had to step on his guy, Davion had to step. I think RJ had one too. It was the same sequence. And just Jakob's like awareness and just like brilliance on that play to just be like, how can I help my teammate the most right now? And it's not by rolling to get the ball, because obviously Jakob typically catches it in the pocket and gives an option that way. This is a different way where Jakob helps in the pick and roll, where he's just able to seal his man and let it be a one-on-one. And at that point, it's like, can Davion get a step on his man? I thought Davion played really well tonight. Can RJ Barrett get a step on his man? He clearly could do that. And even Ochai, who I thought, came up with some big baskets, knocked down a corner three, drove to the basket, got fouled. Unfortunately, went 1 for 2, but that was still pretty good. Then drove it in for a reverse layup. Like all those things were like really strong by Toronto. And I think that like for this young team to feel a tiny bit of pressure. I mean, like, again, like I can't stress enough how much the Pacers really didn't play great basketball today. And the Raptors were able to sort of like have their control over the game for the entire time. But even to just manage that stress, see the Pacers come back at you with a bit of a run. The Pacers can be like overwhelming offensively. They got all these guards. They play so fast. They didn't play a center today. They played zone. They played the full court press. All this stuff that like just does junk that's thrown at you constantly. And yet the Raptors were able to handle that, compose themselves, and finish strong. I think that's great. I really think that's great. And honestly, for the team as a whole, I'm just really happy that they're able to come through with this one because they deserve a win. They played hard. Like there's the I don't know, like the asset management, portion of like tanking where it's like, you know what, like you don't get extra lottery odds from this one or whatever. But like these are human beings and like they're playing hard. And the last thing I want to see for a young team is for them to sort of lose hope, stop playing in the same sort of way. I think for the most part, there's been a great enthusiasm around the team this season. And, you can even see it in moments on the court. Like I thought, for example, one of the most endearing things about this game was the fact that Garrett Temple, who's in year 15, who when I was in LA, I caught up with Garrett just a little bit. And I'm like, yo, Garrett, they keep putting you on the injury report with this sort of like back spasms. Like, are you okay? What's going on with your back? And he was like DMP old. And I was like, oh, word. Okay. So I think he was just joking. But like, at the same time, I totally can understand how a 36-year-old, 37-year-old could have back spasms just randomly. And yet the last couple of games, he's actually gotten in and not gotten in garbage time, not gotten in as like a emergency sort of situation because the Raptors did have more bodies. But they were like, we're going to put in Garrett Temple in the second quarter. And yes, he's going to be somebody who's going to come in and we're not going to necessarily like go to him that much because it's Garrett Temple. But it's also like, this man is a walking consummate professional. Like I was watching his warm up today because I got to the arena around 5. The game started at 7:30. So I'm watching Garrett Temple's warm up, and this man's in a full sweat. He's like playing 2-on-2 full out against all the assistant coaches. At one point, he like crammed it on one of the Raptors assistant coaches. I don't even know what that guy's name was, but he's like 6'7", 6'8", was at the basket making a full contest, and Garrett Temple just like dunked all over him. It was great to see, And yeah, he was like in a full sweat. Like again, a lot of these guys warm up, whatever, but they're not in a full sweat. And I was like, okay, maybe he's working out that hard because he's not going to play tonight. He actually gets in the game second quarter, and he did so many good things for this team. Whether that was like back-to-back steals, including the second one where he like got on the ground and got the ball, and then got the Raptors on the break, and then I think Grady got a layup on the other end. The other for first steal, he drove the lane, pushed the break, and then like jumped, turned around and shoveled it off to like whoever was the trailer for a layup. That was a great play. Whether that was him knocking down a corner three, and this is how you know the whole team loves Garrett Temple because he knocked down that corner three. The Pacers called timeout, and as the Raptors were going to the bench, the entire Raptors bench walked. I mean, nowadays Raptors bench is pretty injured, so like not everybody's there, but like everybody comes onto the court, and everybody wanted to get a high five from Garrett Temple. Like how much Like this veteran who obviously doesn't play, he's mostly there as some sort of like hybrid between like veteran, mentor, even assistant coach, if you want to call it that, whatever. But he's mostly there for guidance, not for the encore performance. But when he gets on the court and he gets that kind of response and he plays like that to earn that response, because in those 11 minutes, it's like 3 points. He knocks down a three rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, a block. I love that. Like he got the Raptors out on the break 3 times today, man, in 11 minutes. Like I just can't say enough. Like that's exactly why like you have a guy like this on the roster, not even just to make the contributions, but to show you what a professional does. Because this man doesn't even play all season. He works out like that before the game, and he comes out and he actually delivers a great spark, and the whole team can certainly respond to that. That was great to see. I also love seeing in the first quarter when the Raptors got down the floor quickly and they kicked it out. And both times it was Jamison Battle who was able to up fake, sidestep, knock down the 3 right at the buzzer there. And at the end of the first quarter, Jamison Battle knocked down the 3 and he came off the court. And Scotty Barnes went for a chest bump. And it literally knocked Scotty's like cowboy hat off because Scotty was cosplaying as Bruce Brown today. So we just had 2 guys. This might be the first time in the history of the NBA where there's 2 guys sitting on this sideline looking like cowboys basically. But like the team chemistry is there. Like there is still spirit. But whatever, like at the end of the season, it's not necessarily going to be about the spirit. It's going to be about how much this team grows individually and also maybe as a group and what their identity is. But you just want to see them get rewarded for their efforts. They've been playing so damn hard. And today they were able to actually come out and finish the game. So just a lot of good positives in this performance. I think that on the Pacers side, I'd be pretty worried. I mean, just talking to a couple of people around that team, like I think Tyrese has obviously been it's been an enigma watching him. I mean, these 5 of 18s with 2 of 9 from the field, like that's not necessarily rare for him this season. Last year he had the injury after the first like euphoric first half of the season where he was like checking Dame time because he was beating the Bucks in the NBA Cup, and he was having all these moments and he was leading the league in assists and it was like looking great, and the Pacers were the number 1 offense in the league. And he obviously picked up that injury where he hit the splits against Boston last year, but he hasn't necessarily come back from that very strong. It feels like there's a lot of things going on for him generally too off the court. And then it's like when you see him like actually play, he just doesn't look as confident as assured. He's kind of just flinging shots. And I think that's my overall review of the Pacers is there's a lot of very talented players. And certainly there's a degree in which like the Pacers' freedom and pace and sort of like bravado is sort of what made them really effective offensively last year too. But right now they've gone beyond just like we're being aggressive and we're playing free to being like we're just playing dumb. Like I don't know why possessions need to be like a early like first 8 seconds of the clock, Obi Toppin stepping back for a pull-up 3. Or like the random shots that Tyrese is shooting, or like even Jarris Walker's like running around taking like 6 threes. Like that's not his primary game. Like I wouldn't say he's a shooter like that. It felt like in the first quarter, Pascal can never touch the ball. And then he comes in with the bench and he's featured. And then, okay, all of a sudden he's got a rhythm. But then, eventually the Raptors adapt to that. And then, he's taken out the game. And then there's a TJ McConnell phase. Like there's just too much randomness that goes on with what the Pacers do, especially because defensively, they just have no cohesiveness. Like obviously they didn't have Miles Turner, but even with Turner, they're not a good defensive team. So for the Pacers in general, I just have not walked away impressed. I've seen like 3 or 4 of their games this season. It's kind of been like a similar pattern for them. They've had some head scratching losses, but nevertheless, I think that like the Raptors still handled themselves pretty well. And they played just a very composed game at home. Like the one good thing I could say about the Raptors is I can't really look at this roster and say one guy that played a bad game tonight. Like maybe Jamal Shed with those turnovers, and Darko did certainly like, make those timeouts and sort of yank him off the floor both times, but he also had good moments where he was able to get into the lane and cut and finish and hang. He's got a nice little rhythm to his game. I thought that was good. The only thing I didn't like that, like I mentioned, is with Sam, when we talked with Sam Vecini on the Raptors rookie report cards, which we dropped this week. We also looked obviously ahead of the 2025 NBA draft class and, talked about Cooper and Ace and all these other guys. The one thing I said with Shed is just it feels like the first shift when he comes in, he's just a little over eager. And that over eagerness does lead him to like some silly fouls. Like he literally checked into this game and he immediately fouled TJ McConnell. And it was like, just that ball pressure, like there needs to be like some sort of balance. But overall, I thought Jamal actually played okay. Garrett Temple came in and played great. Jonathan Mobile, I thought, came in and gave great energy, and he played well as well, finishing a couple of plays around the basket. Jamison Battle knocking down 3 threes. That was a really good sight. He got really good open looks. He took them. I like the confidence and the patience to sort of up fake, sidestep. He's getting these flyby closeouts, which I think already says a lot about him as a shooter. But then he's got the confidence to actually do that. And then it feels automatic, by the way. When he's able to get a wide open, he's got time to set and shoot. I thought Chris Boucher played a good game as well. His rebounding was huge in this one. The fact that the 3 blocks, by the way, one of the most impressive sequences defensively this season from the Raptors, which I think the Raptors might still be 29th or 30th in defense. But there was a play in the second quarter where Chris Boucher blocked the 3. The ball went out of bounds. The Pacers got the ball back in. They, they ran some action, and then they tried to get another 3 off, and Chris Boucher blocked another 3. How many times have you seen somebody block 2 3-pointers on the same possession? And that actually led to, I believe, a shot clock violation for Indiana. That was a turnover. That was super impressive in terms of effort from Chris, and I thought he did a really good job today. Grady, he was knocking down threes. I think the Pacers just, again, defensively didn't have the focus at all, and so Grady was able to, the Grady going from I'm getting mauled by Derek White and the Pace and the Celtics all night to hey, I'm get to play the Indiana Pacers, and I'm getting guarded by Johnny Furphy, who apparently left the game too. By the way, Johnny Furphy is actually the player who replaced Grady at Kansas. He was kind of like the second Grady Dick or whatever. But I thought Grady was oh, this guy, literally my understudy, I'm going to cook him. And I thought he was super aggressive, especially off the dribble against Johnny. And one time it came off, one time it didn't. But yeah, I thought Grady, got into a good rhythm. Defensively, I think that most games you just don't want him to have to guard a Benedict Mathurin. You probably would just have to hide that matchup. I think that's where the Pacers are very unique in terms of putting on if he wasn't guard, he can't guard obviously Toppin because that's their center. So it's you either have to guard Halliburton or TJ McConnell or Mathurin or Pascal. It's there's not a good matchup for Grady out there, so he has to hide on somebody. So he did get burned a little bit there, but generally speaking, his conversion was good. I think him working the pick and roll with Jakob was good too. A lot of options where he was coming off the screen and the Pacers were trying to step up towards Grady. Some help coming off the center, and he was able to lob it over the top to Jakob, who was finishing everything these days. I thought Davion played a really a strong game. It's pretty much the same game he plays every single night, but I love the consistency of that. He slowed down the pace in the moments that they needed it. He went strong to the basket. I think those are the things that I liked, seeing that quick burst and him getting downhill and just finishing a couple more. He typically sprays it out, but for the most part, there are some moments where you want to see him finishing, and he did that a couple times in the fourth quarter. Ochai just played a good game overall. I felt like he did a really good job defensively in general. Davion, by the way, defensively too, should get a shout for how much he covered Halliburton and sort of made it difficult for him. And then Jakob is just, what could you say, man? This guy's just finishing everything. And it's nothing crazy because you watch a 30-piece by Jakob Poeltl and you're not going to see one highlight, that stands out or whatever. But it's all stuff that it's step throughs around the basket. It's sort of just he times his finishes well. He works his footwork in a decent way. It's nothing crazy, nothing fancy, mostly straight to the point, but he just gets that job done. He's rebounding. Obviously tonight the Pacers didn't have a center, so he was walking to the basket in a lot of these sequences. I do think that against the zone, and my one thing with Jakob with the passing is he is a guy who can pass well from the center position, but I find he almost always throws soft passes. And I would love for the Raptors to sort of put more zip on their passes in general. I think that was the issue that Jamal ran into with some of those turnovers. And Jakob does have a propensity to just throw these soft passes that are easier to pick off. But generally speaking, he played great, A+ game for him. And then RJ Barrett, this was just sick watching this. I was really hoping for him to eventually get to 40 at the end there. Unfortunately, the Pacers fouled Jakob actually at the end to get Jakob to 30 rather than RJ getting a chance to get to 40 or 40 plus. But still, RJ played great, and that composure down the stretch was exactly what the team needed. So just a really nice win on the whole. And again, I want to remind you that we will be taking your questions. So this is your last chance here to sort of get some of the questions into the chat. Producer Jerome is looking for them. And of course, I see the audience is growing too. Just hit the stream. Hit like on the stream, please. Please. I don't know why this is so important to me, but it just is. Please hit like on the stream, and that will help this podcast grow and also help more Raptor fans find the Rad Pod the morning after. So we are going to skip the break and we're just going to go straight to the questions. And I want to let you know that the Tangerine Q&A fan inbox is brought to you by, obviously, Tangerine, the official bank of the Toronto Raptors, a foundational partner of WNBA Canada and NBA Canada. And of course, they're not just fans of basketball, they're fans of basketball. They're fans of fans who have their own nickname for each guy in the starting five, or fans who stand 5 inches from the TV all game. That sounds exhausting. Or fans who can recreate every player's layup package while sitting from the couch. If you're hearing this, there's no doubt your commitment. Fans like you are at the heart of what makes this game great. So for the Raptors' 30th season, Tangerine is turning the spotlight from the court to the stands and celebrating the way Raptor fans support their team, because this is how we fan. To learn more, visit tangerine.ca/basketball. Tangerine is an excellent sponsor, and they truly, truly, truly support basketball in this country. Jerome, Tangerine fan inbox. What's the question here? This is from Michael. Yak/RJ pick and roll has been very effective lately. What does that look like once Barnes and quickly return? This is a great question, because that's obviously going to change the offense. Even in the 2 games that IQ came back in LA, that already kind of changed up the offense a little bit. I think with Scotty too, that's another change up to the team's offense. But I think in general, what this has really established is like, this is like a good option that the Raptors can use, whether that's for the starting 5, probably not, but probably for those secondary lineups where, the Raptors are playing with the second unit. And right now the Raptors second unit can sometimes really get out of focus because they were playing a lot of guys who typically just don't really have much offense generation. This just gives the Raptors another really good benefit. I think the matchups that it really works well in, number one, against teams that don't have a strong rim protector. Obviously, RJ and Jakob going to the basket puts a ton of pressure on the basket between RJ's drives, between the pocket passes of Jakob for the floaters, or even just the offensive rebounds where Jakob's just hunting everything down. Again, he's second in the NBA right now in offensive rebounds behind Jokic. It is a really good option, especially against teams that don't have that. And I think also the context here is most teams right now are actually focusing on this pick and roll matchup as like the number one thing on their scouting report. And so when teams have to focus on IQ and Scotty as well, all of a sudden, their defensive intensity against this specific play will just kind of ease up. And honestly, I would love to see more pick and roll between those two. I think since RJ's come back, this has been a great, great play. And Jakob has just been sensational all season. So this is a great question from Michael. And I do think the Raptors will be running this play more often. What's the next question that we have here? This is from Raptors fan 420, just sent in $13.99. That's really nice of you. And I'll be splitting that with my boys, Jerome and Alex. We all getting fed off $13.99. I appreciate it, though. Thank you so much. Next one from Nisha Seth, who sends in 5. Not going to lie, a professional center makes this team so much more watchable. Thank you, Jakob. I feel like Jakob Poeltl this season is getting so much love. And, it's been very interesting watching Jakob because he's always been a really solid player. Even as a rookie, he was in the rotation. The only thing really keeping him from playing more minutes was just how bad of a whistle Jakob got. Like the Jakob Poeltl rookie whistle was like one of the worst whistles I've ever seen. Like that was like I guess he got a no call on the Tatum horse collaring him for the game winner. So maybe that hasn't changed all that much, but as a rookie, Jakob used to just get screwed. But he was always a really good center, and really, really solid. I thought that obviously if he wasn't going out in the trade, eventually one day he could have been the Raptors starting center. He was that quality. And then he goes to San Antonio, and obviously the Raptors win the championship, whatever, right? No one's going to look back and be like, oh man, we lost Jack in that deal. They got the championship. But then of course, when he comes back, the circumstances of him coming back to Toronto was like, Raptors are already 5-6 games under 500 at the trade deadline. Everyone expected them to sell. Instead, they trade for and they actually buy Jakob. And the feeling was like, well, I think that this team really needed a center, and that team definitely played the whole season without one. Everything was a compromise. It was kind of a miserable year. Maybe we get a center and fixes things. And it didn't fix that because Jakob's not somebody who's going to come in and fix everything for you. And what that led to, especially because Pascal ended up walking away, or getting traded, and Fred ended up walking away, and the Raptors kind of missing out on a season where potentially they could have pivoted towards a really good draft, which had Wemby in it, whatever. What that led to was just so much discussion around that was a bad trade. This was the wrong direction of the team, and we're mad at management. And the person caught in the middle of all of this was Jakob. Because let's be honest, it wasn't Jakob's choice to do any of this. Jakob thought, oh, I'm in a rebuilding situation in San Antonio, and I get to go back to Toronto where I really liked it. and I get to go to a winning team. Cool. This is great. What's not to like? They're obviously going to re-sign me in the offseason too, which they did. But what this led to and all the circumstances around it, like Jakob got swept into this whole like, should we tank or not tank or rebuild or not rebuild debate. And it's not Jakob's fault. Jakob's been a solid center this whole time. And right now, obviously, he's been more important to the Raptors and he's playing his best basketball. And that's good. I don't think it validates the trade, whatever. I think, the point was never about Jakob. It was always about the direction of the team. But like, I really hated seeing Jakob kind of get the splashback of that in terms of that, like that frustration, because it was never really about Jakob as a player. Jakob's a really, really good player, which the last 3 games he's played at an all-star level, which I never thought I would say about Jakob, but he's actually played that important of a role. He's always been a really responsible defender. He's always been somebody who can, the Raptors really had him analytically as like a top 10 defensive center in the league in terms of the impact, if not even a little bit higher than that. He's always had skill set where it's like he's unselfish, he plays the right way, he's a good professional in the locker room too, everyone likes him. Like, all those things were never about him. But right now, especially with the Raptors having committed to a direction, and people generally speaking are on board with this idea that the Raptors are rebuilding and that this is sort of a year where you get to see where the young guys are at, all of a sudden you're getting to see like, okay, with all that stuff out the way, we can just appreciate Jakob for what he is, and he's great. And of course, the next discussion is going to be, okay, he's playing so well, what can we trade him for? And like, honestly, that's fair. Like, the Raptors as a tanking team or like a rebuilding team should be taking calls on everybody, especially the veteran players, and you got to see what you get. Someone offers you something crazy like 2 first-round picks, you got to obviously like make that deal and bite the bullet. But at the same time, Jakob's a really great Raptor, and I think that like he just was here in the weird times, whether that was before the championship or after the sort of post-championship hangover where they were kind of in limbo. That's not his fault, man. But Jakob is a really, really good dude. This next question here from Jimmy McBagger, who sends in $2. I like this, man. How much money are we getting on the stream tonight? This is sick. At this point, is trading Jakob even the right move? I don't think you trade Jakob just to trade Jakob. You're not trading Jakob just to like, quote unquote, fuel the tank or whatever. Like, you're not just dumping a player for nothing. I think that's dumb. I actually think that's dumb. Obviously, he's playing at his peak level, and so a lot of people think that's the peak value. You know what? Peak value is going to be determined based on what other teams are going to be able to call and offer for. Right now, I think this is a great position. Number one, he's playing really well. He's really helping this young group. Again, like, you want to talk about development for young guys. You take Jakob off the floor, you know what's going to happen? They're going to be like, man, Scotty, can you play some small ball center for us? And it's like, we just did this shit for like 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, this weird compromise thing of like, okay, he's got to play that. Okay, now you take Jakob off the floor. IQ's like, wait, I'm a pick and roll point guard. Who am I playing pick and roll with? Jonathan Mobo? Like, it's just not going to hit the same. Like, there's nothing against Mobo. There's just nothing to like playing with Jakob. And IQ and RJ's like, yo, man, I've been just playing great pick and roll basketball recently. You're gonna take my best screener? You know what I mean? And like, it kind of just undercuts the spirit of the team. That alone is not the reason to not trade him. But at the same time, like, you are definitely not just trading him for nothing or like trading him just to sort of get the Raptors worse or whatever. This isn't the process. Like, this isn't the process. It just isn't. Like, the Raptors are going to be a team that is going to continue to play the way they're playing, try to establish the right habits. Jakob is like an avatar for pretty much all of that in terms of like what he does. And then, when you get these calls, when you get 3 or 4 teams that are like, yo, we're trying to contend this year and we have no center, or we really need a good center, or we need an upgraded center, let them call you. And then you can just like pivot back and forth and play them off of each other. And if you get a great price point, like you get like a young center prospect, which is number one thing I want back, because I definitely don't want to see this Raptors team play without bigs. Like, bigs are so important. And also the Raptors have no young bigs really. Like, they have like Mobo, who's like a wing, who's playing as a big. Shamshe is like many years away. That's pretty much it. Like, I need a young big in the pipeline. And then also I need to obviously get some high quality picks. And at that point, you have to have a conversation too. And this is the most important part. You have to have a conversation with Jakob and just say like, hey, teams are calling for you. Number one, you've been great to us. You're obviously under contract. First off, do you want to stick around? Do you like the situation? Or do you like these other situations that they're potentially trading? Like, at least work with him to some degree. Not to say that he has a no trade clause or anything like that, because he doesn't. And obviously business is business. But like, at least incorporate them, because you know what? I truly believe in order to do business with somebody, if they show you that respect, first and foremost, you got to be able to return that to them. And yeah, like I said, Jakob's been nothing but a good Raptor, man. And like, putting aside like the tank or don't tank things, like, he actually is just a really good player. And I'm happy he's playing like he's balling out. Like, it's crazy, man. He's actually just killing it right now. So shouts to Jakob Poeltl, man. What else do we have? in the questions, Jerome Chang. Glenn Sama again. Let's go. 3 straight episodes of Glenn Sama. Appreciate you watching so religiously. Please hook me up, Will. We need to brainstorm some good excuses to convince the wife to call our incoming daughter a variation of RJ Barrett. All-star Rowena. Rowena? I don't know, man. Yeah, RJ Barrett, man. This is I mean, first off, congratulations to you and your wife. Hopefully everything's gonna be good, and congratulations on becoming parents for the first time, or n+1 times or whatever. But like naming this is actually so funny you mentioned this, because we actually recorded an episode earlier today, me and Alex, where we're gonna drop that on Wednesday, where we went around the league, and I think there was something that came up where someone in OKC named their child like Jalen Alexander, as a mix of like Jalen Williams and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And so it's very funny that this has been brought up here. I mean, RJ Barrett, it's like I mean, I don't know, man. This is tough. How do you convince them? I mean, first off, maybe I'm just not entirely sold on this name, but I do love the spirit, and I do love how much people love the Raptors. This is why it's a Tangerine fan inbox. They're fans of fans like you, okay, Glenn Sama. Yeah, how would you convince your wife? I mean, this is where you just try to sneak it in as a middle name. You're like, you know what, like, or maybe make the initials RJ. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, but this is tough. Rowena is a tough name, but I support you, Glenn. And once again, congratulations to you and your wife, and hopefully everything's okay with that process. But yeah, thanks to all of you guys for the questions. This is cool. It's just been nice to hang out. It's nice to actually feel a win too. Like, let's be honest, man. Like, there's definitely more audience when the Raptors win, and there's certainly a better vibe when the Raptors win. And obviously, that's not going to happen that often, but does make you want to cherish these moments, man. It's been great hanging out. Thank you, obviously, for people sending in money to the show. Certainly no better way to show appreciation to Chinese people than to throw money at them. This is cultural for us. But seriously, it was a really good performance. And I think to wrap up here, you got to hand out the 3 stars and your Gerald Henderson Award, the most important guy. 3 stars from tonight's performance. Number one's got to be RJ Barrett. Shouts to you, RJ. You played so well, someone wants to name their daughter after you. 39 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 13 of 21 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 9 of 12 from the free throw line. Yeah, I just thought RJ, started the game really well. He had double digits in the first quarter, he had double digits in the fourth quarter. And in between, there's moments where it's like, okay, against the zone, he threw it like directly into a couple players. He just wasn't reading the defense well. And obviously teams are having to adjust to a lot of what he does. And he's never probably been focused on this much defensively since he was like a rookie or sophomore with like that terrible Knicks team. So like, there's obviously adjustments to be made, but in general, he played really well. And I think that like, I'm happy for him to close out a game too. Cause like low key, like, a lot of this sort of frustration has sort of been like RJ coming up big in games, keeping them in it, keeping them in the lead, and then teams adjust and really narrow in, and then his stubbornness or just like a couple plays not made here or there, missed shot here or there. And it's like, I didn't want him to get discouraged. I actually love how much RJ is aggressive and looks to attack and looks to get into the paint. I mean, I felt like RJ probably got in the paint like 20 times tonight, man. Like that's a hell of an effort for RJ Barrett. And he's been playing very determined. He's been, very involved, very, very aggressive every game he's been back. And it's just more growth for him. He's only 23. He's like, he's like a year older than Scotty, for example. But like, yeah, he played really well tonight. 39 points. Jakob Poeltl is your second star, 30 points, 15 rebounds, 13 of 18 from the field. Like, it's ridiculous. Today wasn't even so much like the pocket passes for like the push shots. That's kind of what it was against the Celtics. Today was more like right at the rim, finishing. Even him defending Pascal a couple times was really cute. Obviously, the two of them came in the league together. They were big, they remain really good friends as well. Yak and Skills. Seeing them obviously on different teams now, brothers on a hotel bed situation. But like, yeah, this was just a really fun game from Jakob, and he's been playing great. Like, I actually can't wait to see what Jakob does against Minnesota when the Raptors play again this week at home on Thursday. Like, I can't believe I'm looking forward to the next Jakob Poeltl game. I don't think even diehard hoop fans haven't said that, but he's just on such a roll right now. It's like, can you do this against Gobert now? And if he does, honestly, I wouldn't put it past him, man. Like, do you really? Again, that's a drop center. Like, he's probably going to be open in the pocket quite a bit, and he's probably going to be dropping those little floaters. and it'll be interesting to see. Your third star, I don't know. Honestly, I'm gonna give it to Garrett Temple, man. Shouts to Garrett Temple, man. Garrett, it's always love when we see each other, man. This guy, we saw each other at the AGO. This man came up and gave me a dap, and then he was like, "All right, let's do the press conference now." That was cool, getting dapped up in front of the press. Yeah, I know I'm vain. It's what it is. But Garrett, man, Garrett, he had a really good game. I thought just again setting the example, setting the tone. If only you could see the sweat that this man was in, the lather that he worked up before he got into his game tonight, and he comes in the first half. He played a great half. Then he comes in the second half. He came in with a good shift. Like stuff like that, setting the example, seeing how much the team responded to him knocking down the three, and then everybody getting on the court wanting to high five this guy. Like, him diving on the floor. Like, yo, this guy's in year 15, man. And honestly, the thing was that is like, if Garrett Temple can walk in and do that, there's no excuse for any other guys. Like, there just isn't. Like that's the baseline and that's the approach and that's the intensity you got to come at it with. Garrett Temple's played his whole career, man. If the guys retires tomorrow, he have tons of opportunities in the league, whether he wants to coach, whether he wants to go in the front office, whether he wants to keep doing more stuff with the NBPA, like whatever he wants. This man's got a great career and he's got a great head on his shoulders, but he still wants to hoop right now. And when you see him come in the game and do this, like, I mean, that even fired me up, man. I'm not going to lie to you. It fired me up, and it was great to see the response around him and his teammates. So shouts to Garrett Temple. Per sources, he'll be going on the Raptors show on Wednesday, so you're going to have to wait 2 days, unfortunately, to get Garrett his perspective on this. But this was huge, man. And I was just really thrilled to see what the vet GT did. And this is how the reciprocity works in the media, man. You give me a dap, you get a third star. I'm shameless. It is what it is. Your Gerald Henderson Award winner for the game. I kind of want to, I'm going to go with Quenton Jackson. He's the two-way player for the Pacers. To be honest, the only reason I really was aware of him was because I watched the game last night between the Pacers and the Heat to sort of prepare for this one and sort of have context around, because I like to do that sometimes, especially if I have time, like just watch a couple of games, especially the last game they played, just to get some context as to sort of, okay, what they did against this team versus what they're going to do against my Raptors the next day or whatever. And I thought he stood out in that game too, in terms of just his pressure. He gets on the ball. He was all over RJ at one point. RJ kind of like had to chicken wing him and take an offensive foul, just sort of like get him off. Like, I love pressures, like players who really, really pressure and get into the ball. A lot of these guys are like two ways, whatever. Like, they got to do whatever they can to get on the floor. And on a team that like the Pacers, who really don't play much defense, like, do we actually play a little bit of defense and show that sort of priority on that end for them is like a pretty significant thing. So shouts to Quenton Jackson, man. He actually played a pretty good game tonight. Was a good part of the Pacers' second unit, being able to sort of force stops, because the Pacers' starting lineup sucked. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Mathurin came in with terrible energy. Tyrese just flinging up random shots. Jarris Walker kind of looking lost on most of the game. Enrique Freeman, I mean, this man literally just walked onto the court like he wasn't expecting to start at center. And then Pascal was just trying to be Pascal, but and he did a good job, like 25 and 10 with 5. In 39 minutes, shot 9 of 20 from the field, 6 away from the foul line. Like, you can't argue with this Pascal game, but like there's just too much like randomness happening with the starting lineup, and it was just their bench actually that really brought them back into the game. But it was a fun game. Oh, and your most important guy, and this is, by the way, the most important guy is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ, where yes, we did host a watch party for them last week. It was a really, really good time. All the reviews I got from people were like, Greta is a sick bar. It's cool that obviously you get food, you get drinks, all that's good. The vibe's good, the location's good. 590 King Street West, right there at King and Portland. It's obviously right where obviously most of the action is in Toronto. But it was also just cool to be like, all right, this game's getting a little boring. 2.5 hours of basketball sometimes can drag a little bit, halftime, whatever. People getting up and playing the games too. It was very generous, and they had a lot of giveaways too. So shouts to Greta Bar for sponsoring the show. And the Most Important Guy Award is brought to you by Greta. Most important guy for this game. I don't know if this is like, I feel like this is almost unfair, but I think I'm going to give Garrett the most important guy too. Like, this guy is a third star and he's my most important guy. I just thought that, like, again, this is why you need a vet around the team. And obviously this is like pretty much his only moments that he actually played this season. He got on the court a couple different times. He got on the court the home opener, for example, when the Raps got blown out, whatever. But like, him coming on and doing that, like, I think was a good example for the team. So shouts to Garrett Temple once again. One tap gets you 2 stars apparently on this program. So thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate it so much. Thanks for people for sending in money. And if you haven't already, please hit like on the stream. before you go. And also, if you are listening on the podcast, which obviously you should be listening to the podcast feeds as well, please, especially if you enjoy these, especially if you see all the effort that we make in trying to go live after every game and try to give you coverage, going down to the arena, and then coming to the studio, whatever. Making just leave us a review. Just tell us how much you really enjoy it, especially on Apple. It really goes a long way. Keeps us high in the charts. I mean, I don't want to brag. It's the number one basketball podcast in Canada. Just look at the charts. But at the same time, it's like, in order to keep it that way, it really requires your support. And yeah, it's been really cool, man. It's been really cool to see a win finally. Raptors snap a 7-game losing streak. It's been cool to see these young guys come out there and continue to play well. And yeah, we just are excited to see what the next step. Well, another $10, $9.99. Happy for a win finally. Slander Pod's coming back soon. Keep up the good work, dude. Yeah, Slander Pods, hopefully, again, when the Raptors get over 500. I was actually going to implement a Celtics addendum to the Slander Pod clause. So I feel like if the Raptors beat the Celtics, especially with the Jakob Poeltl game winner, which it should have been if not for the no call, I think I would have broke it. I think I actually would have done one. That would have felt so good. But unfortunately, the Pacers are just kind of they're down bad. I can't really stand the Pacers. They're playing like a they got like a player named Furry on the roster. Like, it's tough, man. And he got injured, so I don't even want to joke about him. But like, it is what it is. Raptors win tonight. Thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Home Welcome Podcast presented by Betway. And check for an episode on Wednesday, and we'll be back Thursday live after the Raptors play Minnesota.